Light. It warms us, nurtures us, and lets us see. It's the essence of life, the essence of understanding. In photography, light is everything. And as photographers, we work with it, manipulate it, and record it. Since the day Nikon Corporation began, they've been dedicated to the understanding of light. It is the unifying element of everything they do and the key to truly remarkable photography. Hello, I'm Brett Froomer, professional photographer and spokesman for Nikon School. Today, we'll bring you the story of 3 photographers who have also made light their business. Galen Rowell of Berkeley, California, is a master of the convergence of light and form. Galen's most recent book is Mountain Light, In Search of the Dynamic Landscape. His art is the combining of imagination and action with a clear understanding of outdoor optical phenomena. Roger Ressmeyer of Starlight Photography in Sag Harbor, New York, is known for his masterful sense of light and color. Ressmeyer is a prolific photographer with work appearing in Life, Time, National Geographic, and Smithsonian, along with hundreds of other publications. He is America's leading space photographer. And finally, Jade Albert of Jade Albert Studio in New York. Advertising Age called her maybe the best photographer of children. American Photographer said she achieves the combination of youthful spontaneity and artfulness that is the dream of every photographer. Our first featured photographer is Galen Rowell. Galen Rowell's understanding of light and its reaction on film has helped him create some of the most stunning and beautiful photographs of nature. As Galen points out, it's important that we look for light and work with it. Always pay attention to its color and texture, and most important, anticipate its interplay on our subject.
When you're photographing the natural world, light is everything. If there's no light, there's no picture. And what you're taking a photograph of is light reflecting from objects. The objects themselves don't give off light, but they can give off very different color of light depending on the time of day and all sorts of other factors. So I'm, if anything, more aware of the light than I am of the scenery. I'm always looking where one color of light will key off of another. You find that especially at dawn and dusk. I think a lot of people are tempted just to take a picture of a sunrise and to focus in on the warm colors of a sunrise. But when I go to places like the Eastern Sierra and photograph the mountains, I'm looking for a place where I can key the warm sunrise off of a mountain peak against the deep blue shadows, and I can have that visual tension between the deep blue and the rich warm crimson that will come at the first minute or so of light. And you may not perceive that deep blue. If you're in the middle of it, your eyes, through your brain, will automatically color balance it and make you think that it's normal light. Wherever you are, your eyes neutralize the color balance. So when you're out of doors, you need to think in the language of film and see like film. And when you do that, then you can begin to perceive pictures that are in your mind that will come out very differently than what you're seeing with your eyes. Oftentimes we aren't aware of the differences between warm and cool light. And cool light comes from scattering. When you look up in the sky is blue. And it's blue because all the warm light has been scattered away and all that's left is the blue light. And if you're in shadows that aren't lit directly by the sun, then they're lit by the blue light in the sky. And so they're what we call cool light. If you're in direct light around sunrise or sunset, then that light becomes very warm, because by the same process, a lot of the light rays have been scattered away, leaving only the warmest light to be transmitted. So when you can find the edges between the warm light and the cool light, that's where you find the most visually exciting pictures. When I first began shooting landscapes, I used to think that you're stuck with whatever light you got. And that was all there was to it. And now I realize that you really do have a chance to control natural light. That you can look at something like this and figure, okay, I like that shadow. And then you can use a polarizer or a choice of film or things like that, or the angle that you choose to really control how that comes out on film. And you're not stuck with one way of looking at it. Just because nature deals you a hand doesn't mean that you can't play with it. And as a photographer, that gives me a sense of power and creativity that I didn't have when I first started. I thought, well, I'm just taking my camera and lifting it up and taking a picture of what I see. But now I'm going around and I'm looking for that light to be just right and to do what's in my mind's eye. And so I have a sense of control. One thing I've learned over the years, and that's never to try to force photography. If things aren't working for you, think, okay, this isn't working. How can I move into what will work? So when light isn't working for me, I think, okay, how will the light that is here work for a picture that I can make? And when a sky is very rich in blue, that means that there's not much scattering happening, and you have the opportunity to get the differences between warm and cool light, and very strong directional lighting that will have strong shadows in your photographs. But when the sky is very pale, either a very pale blue or when it's overcast, then you have very even lighting. And in those situations, broad landscapes don't work very well. And you're not going to have differences in color in light, but you're going to have such even lighting that it's a wonderful time to photograph people's faces. It's a wonderful time to make close-ups of flowers, to do all sorts of things that you can't do in harsh, strong, hard light. In the natural world, edges are some of the most exciting things to photograph. The edges of light look much more solid on film than they do to your eye. And oftentimes you can find situations where the edge of a shadow or the edge of the different colors of light on film will look very similar to the edge of a form. So I'm always looking for those places where I can surprise people and have a boundary of light and then a boundary of form, and one edge meets the other. And it's not an obvious thing to do. You usually don't think that the edge of a cloud at sunset to the sky can match the edge of a landscape or the curve of the landscape or the way a curved limb of a tree goes into the sky. But if you're very aware of matching light to form, then you can accentuate that form. You can make that form be stronger in your viewer's eye. We've all had the experience of seeing what would be wonderful photographs, just natural events of light and form, and we go, wow, isn't that fantastic? I wish I had my camera. I have those things happen to me, and I miss a lot of photos too. And the only photos that I really get that count for me are ones where I've anticipated the light. Because if I see it happen, and I go, wow, I wish I had my camera, it's too late. I have to have sensed that that was going to happen, to have gotten myself into position, and to have known that something about like that was going to occur. And one of the times when I was very lucky, but as Louis Pasteur once said, chance favors the prepared mind, was in Yosemite Valley. And I saw that with each passing day, the light was falling off of a cliff on Yosemite El Capitan, while the light was staying on a waterfall, and that it kept doing this later and later in the day. And I realized, hey, there's going to be a day when the wall is in complete shadow, and the water coming out from the wall is hit by red sunset light right at the moment of sunset. And then the next day, the sunset light won't hit the water. Because as the sun moves day by day, it sets a little bit different spot in the horizon, then it just moves around. And so on the right day, I was there, and it happened, and within just a matter of 30 seconds, the light was full on the water, and it was like a neon sign. It was a glowing red column of water that lit back into the shadowed cliff, and then just as quickly as it happened, it turned off. As the sun tucked around the corner, it just went up the column of water, and the magic show was gone. I think that a lot of people have the wrong idea what professional nature photographers do. I'm not patient. I would never sit somewhere and wait days for light to happen, or even hours for light to happen. But I would go scout a place in the afternoon, or perhaps the day before, figure out, okay, what time are things going to happen here, where do I want to be? And come back 20 minutes before the light was going to be about right, and wait and watch for that period of time. So when you see a photograph and you think how lucky a person was to be in the right place at the right time, chances are that photographer wasn't just lucky. That photographer figured out where to be before being in the right place at the right time. Machabuchari is one of the most beautiful mountains in Nepal. And I spent 3 weeks walking around it, around the entire Annapurna Massif, seeing Machabuchari many times, but never getting the image that I wanted. The mountain has a classic Matterhorn-like form, and I thought, if I have this in really warm light, it's going to look beautiful. When will I have that? At dawn. And what can I have in the bottom part of the frame? And I looked at the scenery and thought about things. I thought, how about an individual tree? So I went and found the tree that I wanted, and I found the point of view to put the image together. And I purposely thought about putting the tree off-center with a mountain, because I didn't want to relate the two exactly together, because there was no direct relation between the two. And in nature, things that are a little bit random, if they aren't related, look better in a photograph than if you artificially bring them together. And then I went out in the morning and waited for the warm light to touch the top of the peak and move down and down and down until it was just at the point before it touched the top of the tree. And then I had my tree and the whole lower part of the image in blue cool light and the mountain in warm light, and the whole image came together. In any situation, no matter how complex the light is, you'll always look towards a light source. And in a photograph, you'll always look towards the brightest thing in the photograph. And so if it's not your subject, then you better watch out. If you've got a person's face with snow around it, you better pull in really tight on that face so that there isn't too much white area around to distract it. And the same thing happens when you're photographing natural landscapes. You're really making a portrait of nature. And I think about landscapes the same way I think about taking portraits. I'm looking at the natural world. I love the natural world, and I want to make the most beautiful rendering, the most beautiful portrait that conveys an emotional sense in the same way as if I were photographing a person.
When it comes to multiple light sources, Roger Ressmeyer is one of the best. Let's see how he deals with these difficult problems to produce fascinating, well-balanced photographs.
Light for me is like paints, because we get to paint with different types of light and mix them together, and sometimes they come out in ways that you would never expect, both by using strobe light and like the speed light on the Nikon, or maybe taking that light and changing the color of it by putting a gel over the strobe, a colored plastic filter that modifies that light and makes it look like sunset light, or reflecting light from the sun or off a white wall that sort of the ambient light can be changed in its texture and color. Then when you start mixing in other forms of light, I frequently use laser beams, or fire, or flashlights, or many different types of light can be mixed together into a photograph to create something that you never would have imagined would be there on the film. Especially if you do long time exposures or shoot after sunset, when you can mix different types of things together over a long period of time, and you can actually move like a black body through the photograph and pop strobes off in different corners and sort of paint each section of the picture at a separate time. So that's what light is to me. It's an incredible, fabulous toy to play with and to make something magical out of a situation that may not look so wonderful without a little bit of light enhancement. For example, I like to play with car lights because a stationary car just looks like ordinary lights, but when the car starts moving down the road and you're taking a 10-second exposure, the car suddenly will have become a trail of lights, and suddenly it takes on a character that in the moment it isn't there, but over the duration of the exposure is. And what you see isn't what you're going to get. You have to be able to imagine that, for example, fluorescent lights look white to the human eye, but to film it's a green light source. So that's a green paintbrush. And tungsten light looks white to the human eye because the human brain has an incredible color computer that color corrects. But when you take a photograph and a tungsten light is in it, you're really working with an orange paintbrush because it's a warm light source. So in that sense, by experiencing what different lights do under different types of exposures, you can start to put your picture together in ways that aren't immediately apparent. Yeah, this is going to work because of these new Nikon cameras that do balanced fill flash. The camera enables the photographer automatically to bring in the background and have that balanced with the flash on the camera. Now the flash is white light, but the background may have other light sources in it that to the eye looks white, but to the film might look green or orange or some other weird color. And these are, to me, are wonderful tools actually to play with. So there's two ways to approach the problem of light that isn't exactly white. You can either try to correct it to white, or you can choose to use it as a paint.
Hey Dave, we got cool white.
When I'm dealing with speed lights, often what I want to do is change the color from white to some other color. So I carry a gel kit with me. I'll pull out the gel finder and I'll hold it up to the light with all these different colored gels that are all numbered to the little slot where the different color filter is held. And I might say, well, she's wearing a red dress. I think that perhaps this teal blue will go good next to it. And I'll take that filter out and I'll tape it over my speed light and use that to light the background so that now the color of the dress is highlighted. So the background may be a white wall, but now I've changed it into something that actually becomes like a stage. A white wall is now a stage setting with a blue glow across it. Some of these filters I use purely just to change the color and make it real intense, like some of these really bright reds obviously are just to make a red light in the background or on the side of the subject or in the foreground or whatever, to take, let's say, a basically beige and white setting and make it into something very colorful. Some of these, though, are for color correction. So this magenta is exactly the opposite of the color of these fluorescent tubes. These are the cool whites, which basically mean you need about CC 30, color correction 30 magenta, to take the green and make it appear white on film. Do you have another strip? What I'm facing here is the camera is going to expose the background using its own metering system naturally. We're going to have some light coming in through the window, which is basically late afternoon, cloudy daylight. We're going to have some warm tungsten overhead lights that are going to throw sort of an orange cast on the top of my hand or on the shoulders of the model that we're going to have standing here. We have these fluorescent lights which would come out green and sort of make it a putrid color, but we've put magenta gels inside of here in order to make sure that those come out white. But now the big question is, having done all that, knowing that this is all going to basically be white with a little orange coming from above, now I need to figure out how I'm going to photograph Adele and make the light on her face just exactly perfect. So Adele, what I want you to do is stand sort of here and pull out, I like this gold or this silver dress. Can you just, like you're looking at it, you've walked into the store and you just got to have it, you want to buy it, but hold it sort of across you. You know, you can even pull it off the rack if you want. And just sort of stand here. So now what I'm going to be concerned about is how to make Adele look as beautiful as she is. And the way we're going to do that is with our main light, which is going to be a Nikon speed light up front here. And because direct, harsh, narrow angle light, like sunlight, makes people look awful. It brings out every line, it brings out the shadows under the nose, make every little feature look awful. I've decided to go with a much softer light source by basically taking the speed light and shining it through this white diffusion material so that the speed light is lighting this whole area, it's diffusing through the white material, and it's coming towards Adele as though it's coming from a window. So the light on Adele's face will be from a broad source, so the shadows will be real soft, and it's going to make her look as beautiful as she is, as opposed to when you see a beautiful girl or a man and you take them to the beach, you photograph them in the sunlight and they look awful because of the shadows. So basically I've created an artificial window light here to make a soft light source for her. Now there's a second thing that I'm doing with the flash, which is right behind Adele. You can see I've put another Nikon speed light, and I've plugged it into the master light using the SC19 connection cords so that the backlight is going to pop a little halo around Adele's head to make her look a little bit more spiritual and holy and wonderful and beautiful than she would without it. So there'll be this sort of white glow around it, but the trick is I've got to, when I'm shooting, make sure that that strobe is exactly behind her head. Because if it isn't behind her head, we're going to have the strobe is going to come out from over here and it's going to show in the camera and we'll have a big bright white spot. Look towards the camera and try to pretend I'm not here and like you're looking at this dress, but you're also looking in this direction and you're just like you love this dress and you just got to try it on. Okay? Yes. Okay, keep moving, but try to keep your head in the same place. Great, great. Okay, so if you have a light source, don't see it as a problem. See it as something that you can alter into something really beautiful to make your photographs just incredibly different. Fantastic. Great. Love it. And that's the fun of photography for me, is mixing these lights together and using them as brush strokes of different colors. And finding, beautiful people to photograph and having these other colors come in and make their clothing look even more incredible. This is a photo that I did on Mauna Kea on the Big Island of Hawaii, showing an observatory dome. And basically, the shutter was open for 2 hours. The camera was pointed right at the North Star. So as the Earth turns, the stars are spinning around the North Star. So during the 2 hours, I got this circular streak of light. It was completely dark out. There was no moonlight. So all we were getting for the first hour and a half was these stars, these circles of light spinning around the North Celestial Pole. During that time, some astronomers drove up in their cars and did a loop around the telescope dome and created this kind of streaking painting of light using the car lights. So then, suddenly, at the end of the exposure, the moon rose, and I left the shutter open for a few more minutes, and the moon, when it's rising, is red like the sun is when it rises and sets, and that moonlight threw sort of a reddish glow onto the side of the telescope dome and turned the sky from a darkish bluish into this sort of purple color. And the hard part was deciding when to close the shutter. When was this going to be exactly the right amount? And so what I did was I had 2 cameras going, and I tried different exposures for each camera. I shot one a little bit earlier than the other one. You can see on this one I shot it sooner. And so instead of the sky turning all that purpley, we have just the beginning of the light washing on the side of the dome. One of my favorite background light sources is the setting sun and the sky a little bit after sunset. And several years ago, I did a photo of Shirley MacLaine, which ended up being published on the cover of her book, Out on a Limb. It's a photo of her wearing a sweater with her arms crossed and with the sun setting and the orange sky in the background. And I was thinking just recently how complicated it was to set that up back a few years ago before the modern speed lights and matrix metering was available, I had to go out there and meter the sky with a spot meter and set up a strobe light in the foreground and do a flash meter reading of that, and then make sure the balance was just right, and then keep changing the exposure as the sky got darker and darker after sunset, and do Polaroids and brackets, and it was very complex, and it took a lot of the spontaneity out of the setting, and it was a lot harder then. It's just amazing how the modern speed lights take all the difficulty out of that, because the camera's brain does all the thinking for you, and you can light your subject in front of that sunset and let it get darker, and you don't have to think anymore about the balance, because the camera handles that for you. And I've really enjoyed how that's enabled me to get back into photojournalism in a much more spontaneous way.
Roger's ability to work with different light sources has allowed him to create many dynamic photographs. Now, from Roger's massive spacescapes, we go to the delightful world of children with Jade Albert, where light creates the mood.
Light is as basic as you can get. It's the foundation for my pictures. Light creates the mood for me. Whether it's sunrise, sunset, it's the essential for me. I mean, that's how I begin. And that's the beginning of my pictures, with the mood, the direction of light, the source of light, the color of the light. It's all the elements that really make my pictures work. And again, I can't be more clear. The key is light creates the mood for my photographs. I happen to love saturation, warm light. If you want a cool light, a blue light, that's going to give you certainly a different kind of mood than what we sometimes call the magic hour, which is the natural sun, the sunrise and the sunset, which is warm, and the light is more intense, giving me saturation, warm, flattering, luscious colors. And that's what I really need. And I think the kids, which is usually my subject, they look sun-kissed, healthy, happy, and again, that revolves around and creates the mood. So what I have to do is recreate that magic hour, keeping it simple and natural, which is nature's way. I mean, where can you get better than that, is to recreate it in my studio, on my stage, and warm it up again to whatever my personal needs are, what kind of mood I want to create. I just recreate it. And I use a source of light, and it depends how concentrated, how broad, how spread, and again, color, temperature, if I want to warm it up. So funny. And if it's how directed, is it side lit, is it 3/4 lit, is it flat? I have all these different options. And depending on what I do, which I usually have a basic way, that's my favorite way, and I like this lighting to be modeled. I really don't like it to be too flat. Not too dramatic, because you want it to look real. It depends, again, what I'm doing. But I just want it to look natural. What I really like the best is a triangular lighting, which has been very influenced, not by other photography work, but by the masters, the painters, Caravaggio, Rembrandt. And it's just over the nose and over the other eye, and it's just some modeling on the side of the face, and I think that's most flattering. And what I really want it to look is natural. I don't want it to look like I have a lot of lights. I don't want it to look like I've studied it with lights. I'm painting with lights to blend and make it as subtle so it's not distracting, and nobody even thinks about the lighting, and it just works. So it's not a distracting element at all. It just, none of it should be. It should just be an overall wow. Isn't that a great moment? Yeah, I have to have texture, and I have to have a dimension, and that's, again, what I'm trying to build up. If it's flat, it's blah, it's boring, there it is. So I'm trying to give a dimension with the lighting and a perspective, and it just becomes from two-dimensional to three-dimensional to me. I mean, I just have these visions and just trying to recreate them. I can give you many examples, but let's start with one of my favorites, which is the cover of American Photographer. So many people have asked me, was that shot in Arizona? And it's a backdrop. It was done in the studio. And I warmed up the lights, that it had this Santa Fe feeling, and it was just simple. To me, it's simple. I've got it down as simple as I can be, and I try to keep my work as simple, because especially with children, you don't have that much time. and you don't want them to get bogged down with all the wires and the technicals, and I want to put my energy into directing the children, keeping, and of course it's the most important thing, like creating the mood, but it just works. It's not evidence like screaming out, light, light, light. It's just there, and that's the subtlety and the beauty of it, and I need that. Another situation that was similar is the Huggies ad with the babies. They're very warm. The client wanted it to be setting sun. Sometimes I'll say to them, well, how do you feel about the light? Give me a time of day. So then I know if it's noon, it's really bright and it's harsh, and if it's, and I'll say, do you mean like setting sun? And they say, oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. And people think that's outside, which I had this great idea. I wanted to do children in a box, kids in a box, kids in a room, kids in an environment. You put these children, which you'll see today, in this room, and they get so excited. And it's, you don't even need a prop. Just the reaction as they go into these 3 walls. And it's just so funny what happens, or anybody goes in there. It's like their little dollhouse or their own little fantasy world. So here I have this freedom to do what I want, and working with the lighting. And I've tried to achieve my triangular modeled light, and today's colors being very fiesta wear. And I have to make the lighting very tropical and happy and sunny and warm, and the colors of the box gives off some more warmth, and it's the glow, the radiance. It's just happy. It's happiness. It's just, you'll see, it's just something happens with a fiesta where the kids become Mexican jumping beans, and it's just, you just want to, just puts a smile on your face. You just want to dance. It's great. Lighting the box is a real challenge, no matter what lighting system I use, because to get the lights in the box, I'm quite limited. So with these lights, the front lights, because I have it on the TTL, gives me the wide range and the flexibility. And what I've done is warm the lights up for my personal needs to get my texture, my richness.
Bigger eyes, Danielle. Pretty face, Danielle.
At one particular time, you'll see I'm going to put 3 kids in there, so I had to spread the light and make it wider and soften it, and it's less shadows, and it's quite beautiful that way, and you'll see. I feel this particular shot is what I do best, and what the biggest compliment is when people say, that looks like a Jade Albert shot, because it represents my style of light creates the mood, triangular lighting, warm, a texture in the lighting and the skin tones, which adds a dimension of richness, painting with the light, blending it, the ingredients of texture in the clothing, the color palette, making it saturated, the composition, the elements of the kids, their attitudes, it's just all these combinations, you just put them all together and you just see what happens. And that's always a surprise to me. And that's what I like best.
Light, the essence of photography. Nikon is dedicated to light and your ability to use it, control it, and make it work for you. Understand light and you'll understand how to start taking the world's greatest pictures. We hope you've enjoyed this edition of Nikon School and that your increased knowledge of light combined with Nikon cameras, lenses, and accessories will extend your creative vision even further. For Nikon, I'm Brett Froomer. Thanks for watching.